there's a certain beauty to the way you sometimes finally say to yourself what you need to say. Sometimes you say it to another person. You overhear yourself saying things that you cannot return from. There's a wonderful way in which when your voice becomes naturally revelatory, when you start to overhear yourself saying the truth, it's like the way water fills up each little pond as it moves down a mountainside. It fills it to the top and then it just spills over down into the next pool beneath it, from pool to pool. And there's a kind of invitational, gravitational experience. It's the same experience we have of going deeper and deeper into our own bodies, I think. Mm-hmm. I think it's really interesting that the deeper you get into the silence of the body, the more movable it is, actually. Mm. When we have our identities in our personalities, that we get frozen. But what lies beneath the evolving personality on the surface is something that's like water. I remember years ago in the Himalayas, I got very, very sick. I had amoebic dysentery. I was in a very remote part of the Himalayas and I collapsed really, and I had to be carried into this little hamlet where I was placed in a yak manger. It was the only place the family had to put me because the family were about 6 children, mother and father, all in a single room. And so they put me out in this manger where the yaks ate the straw. I was in there for 3 days and 3 nights. But on the 3rd day, I was hallucinating. And I had this experience of my body being the great body, seasonal body of the earth. And I was the water vapor in the sky above the Dhaulagiri and Annapurna. I was the water falling in snow onto the glaciers up there. I was the slow movability of the glacier. I was the melting of the glacier into the streams. I was the stream coming past the house, where the little house, in the manger where I was laid for 3 days. And then I was the Marsiandi River below that. And then I was the Ganges and I was the ocean all at once. And I had this sudden image of the river going past that we'd given a name. We've given a name. We give a name to something that's already gone in a way. We called it the Marsiandi. And I suddenly understood myself as this moving river. I'd been given a name, but actually what was underneath it was something else, was this other, more enormous cycle. So I sat up in the manger and let out this huge gunshot of laughter, and the whole family ran out and I was raving there and hallucinating, covered in yak straw. And then they all just bowed to me, actually. I think they understood the experience I was having because I was laughing and happy and I felt like I was going to die, actually, too, at the same time. So I thought this was my last day, The whole David Whyte project seemed completely absurd. It was like, who is this David Whyte guy who's carrying the world on his shoulders? So that was a very, very powerful experience of movability you're talking about when things start to melt. Yeah. Mm. I have this piece. It's called Intimate Invitation. It's the way that the inner silence of the body is always calling us. It is called Intimate Invitation. I just have to look and I see. I just have to listen and I hear. I need only the slightest desire for anything to find it has already been met right at the center of my body. No need to go anywhere, it seems, and not much to live for, you say, but you forget how you once saw so clearly the brave outline of a single leaf. You forget how you once saw so clearly the brave outline of a single leaf. You forget how you were ravished each morning by the presence of birdsong, how the stream of clouds in the sky seemed to run right through you, and the sun on your skin seemed to pass right through to some inner complexion. How, even when you were stuck without faith, held back and afraid to move, even a little, you could be like the beauty we see in winter ice. Even when you were stuck and without faith, held back and afraid to move, even a little, you could be like the beauty we see in winter ice, just beginning to break and flow. And because after all this time, you have lived for so long without faith in your own joys and your own grief, you live daily with the loss of every word equal to describing what first brought you into this life and the mercy that hides your journey thereafter. You live daily saying love as if it were still far away. You live daily saying love as if it were still far away. Not much to live for, I say. Put down your heavy burden and rest from the hard, everyday labor of not hurting or not feeling or not hearing or saying or seeing. Stop keeping the tears at bay. I say, give it all up. Just come home. Put down your heavy burden and rest from the hard everyday labor of not hurting or not feeling or hearing or not saying or seeing. Stop keeping the tears at bay. I say, give it all up. Give it all up. Just come home.
That's very beautiful.
Mm.
You said one sentence before that very much stayed with me, is when you said, when your voice becomes revelatory.
Yes.
Or when when what you say becomes revelatory.
Yes.
And at least in my understanding of trauma is when we integrate trauma, we regain the parts of us that were the cause of talking about. Like when something is dissociated and missing, we talk about the world, we talk about ourselves. But in the moment that comes back online, we actually speak from it. And that's why every time we heal something, our voice becomes fuller and becomes actually exactly as you said, revelatory. Because what we say is not just cognition, it's cognition, sensing, sense-making, embodiment. It's all of it being said. And that's so beautiful. And maybe you can speak a little bit more about the revelatory voice. You said when you say to yourself what you needed to say to yourself, like when you come into a deeper self-contact, your voice reveals. Maybe you can speak it. That's very beautiful.
Yeah, I do think a good poem or good speech is listened into the world as much as it's spoken.
Right.
You're trying to speak to the listening ear. I don't have I think the image is more unconsciously grounded in my body now, but I did used to years ago. When I was writing, I would imagine myself whispering into a loved one's ear in a very, very low voice what needed to be said. And it's that kind of close-in whispering which is enchanting you into and engendering you into new understandings. Yeah. So in a way, it's like being a good parent to your future self, parenting the self who's going to live out the days to come. In a way, you are big enough, you are large enough, to actually meet the heartbreak that is your path. And we spend a lot of time as human beings, of course, looking for the path where we won't have our heart broken. But there is every path that has any sincerity to it will break your heart. Yeah, you're doing a lot of heartbreaking work. And the moment you close yourself off from that heartbreak is the moment you stop being actually useful and gifted to other people. The only way we can stop having our heartbroken is to decide not to care. And of course, that has enormous repercussions on our system because it's only the surface of you that can decide not to care because the inner part of you can't stop caring, but it meets this wall on the outside. Or it meets an argument, or it meets reluctance. And so our only choice really is to have our heart broken around a path that we really care about. Don't get your heart broken around someone else's path, someone else's work. Break your heart on something that you care about. And most of us care about other human beings. So they're there all the time. So the people we choose, the work that leads us to the right kind of people and to helping in the right kind of way we want to help. So this is a constant, it's like a musical instrument we're learning how to play, and there's never an end. I mean, I always think, with a good musician gets simpler and simpler as the decades go by in their approach to music. I think it's the same thing for a human being, with our vocation and our work and our way of being, is that there's a necessity for simplicity. I think given the difficulties of our times with our massive consumption of resources, we're all contributing to global warming, not just large industries. In the oil industry, we all drive cars. We all use an enormous amount of energy and packaging. And the doorway into the future is through simplicity, actually, and through a joyous simplicity, not puritanical simplicity. But I think one of the things you learn as you get older is that there's an incredible joy to saying no to so many things that you felt you had to say yes to when you were younger. and that got you into all kinds of trouble. There's a famous book which is called Getting to Yes. And I'm thinking of writing a book called Getting to Know. Just saying no to eating too much, to speaking too much, to needing so much. So just a beautiful no, to allow something else to arise. That's much simpler. That needs less input, that needs less resources. Yeah. So that's certainly a theme. I think that's a necessity for humankind at the moment, because our present goals are still around increasing every input and every output. And it's not, we all know it, the game is up. The game is up, and it's just not sustainable.